All right, we are going.
So I looked up what the word proctologist means, and apparently all of that stuff is supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hi. Yeah. Hello, and welcome to The Jib. This bi-weekly podcast is about the many and varied schemes of the many and varied U.S. law enforcement and intelligence agencies, organizations, and committees, and how they are stupid and funny. Join us on our merry journey through space and time. Hi, I'm Barry. You might recognize me from making it to the 658th spot in the New York Times bestseller, 1,000 Nobodies on the Internet You Have to See Before You Die. All right.
Well done. Well done. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry.
You have a sound bank, do you?
There.
Hey. Fantastic applause. Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you.
Sorry, I was
158,
I was
folks.
slow on that. Yeah.
Mm.
Hi, everybody. I'm Seamus, and I have no idea what my Audi's doing right now. So
Your outie.
Yeah.
Your outie is kind. Yes. Don't worry, this podcast is mysterious and important.
Yes.
But we're not here to discuss your outie. And what I like about this is we refuse to explain it. So if you don't know what we're talking about, you're just going to stay in the dark. And if you do know what we're talking about, don't say it, for God's sake. Don't say anything. Just put other catchphrases in the chat to annoy people who don't know what we're talking about. Other things that show that you know what we're talking about to annoy other people. Oh, there's nothing I like more than a clique. Anyway, we're here to discuss Grenada. We have a map. Now, the little red box there is Grenada, and the reason I've put that map there is because that is a map of southern Spain, and I have a little red ring, if you can see it, around Grenada, after which it is named. So Grenada there isn't much bigger than the city after which it's named. It is a tiny island in the Caribbean, and when I say it's tiny, the smallest US state is Rhode Island, as you all probably know. Rhode Island is 1,200 square miles. Grenada is 135 square miles. Right? Small-ass place. Ooh, hello. There we go. That's Rhode Island and Grenada. Yeah, the green bit there is Grenada in the middle. Now, we're going to get some history. Traditional Barry script, right? After a failed British attempt to set up a colony, the French successfully set up a colony in 1649 after coming to terms with the local people. These terms quickly broke down into 5 years of fighting, and in 1654, the locals threw themselves off a cliff rather than surrender to the French. Now, this is, again, if you've watched our thing, you'll know this is quite a common thing that happens, is that colonizers will go to a place, make friends with the locals there, and the locals will be fine with them for about 2 weeks until they find out what they're up to, that they're imperial colonialist swine, and then they get fucked off, right? But these guys would rather throw them. That's happened to a lot of American tribes.
Yeah.
They're quite happy with them until they figured out what was going on. And it happened in Haiti too, if you remember our Haiti episode. Anyway, the locals threw themselves off a cliff rather than surrender to the French, which is fair enough. I mean, I do that too. Initially, there were plantations for sugar and indigo plants, but this moved to cocoa and coffee by the mid-1700s. Coffee's big business even now. After much fighting between France and England over the island, which included a slave revolt inspired by Haitian independence, it ended under English control. This was good news for the slaves, who were emancipated in 1838 after slavery was outlawed by Britain, and we discussed this in the Haiti podcast as well. Mm-hmm. The slaves were, in a familiar story, replaced with low-paid workers from India. And so even in 1840, whatever, 1838, they were at that business.
Outsourcing
to India, yeah. In 1843, Grenada started producing nutmeg.
Yep.
Look at that. Nutmeg. Today, Grenada is the world's second largest producer of nutmeg after Indonesia. And into the Indonesian nutmeg industry.
Didn't Jan Cohen and the East Dutch Indian Company pretty much do a genocide over nutmeg?
In Indonesia?
I can't remember where it was, actually.
Well, it wasn't in Grenada. I don't know. Maybe they did. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
But give me 2 weeks and a Wikipedia page, and I'll find out. I'll have a script about it. But Indonesia is the world's greatest producer of nutmeg, and presumably in 1843 it wasn't, but Grenada was. And Grenada still produces a lot. They call it the Spice Island because it still produces a lot of things like cinnamon and cloves and so on.
So it's Dune.
Yeah, it's Dune. It's Dune, but with slightly. Well, actually, yeah. Hang on. Yeah, it's Dune.
Oh, so they're just waiting for Paul Atreides to drink the water of life and.
Oh, you're gonna love what they have instead of Paul Atreides.
Okay, cool, cool.
As is the case with most colonies, they spent much of the first half of the 20th century moving gently towards democracy. And we discussed that with Congo and all these other places. The first half from 1900 to 1950, they're all kind of gently moving towards democracy.
Gently.
Gentler. In Grenada's 1951 general election, 6 of the 8 seats went to the Grenada United Labour Party. So what's the acronym there? The Grenada United Labour Party.
GUN?
Labour Party.
Oh, Labor. GOL.
Gulp.
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 That's what they called it. Gulp.
Big gulp.
Grenada United Labour Party.
Oh, there's a Timmy sighting.
Oh, my cat.
Yeah.
You see him?
That's all. He was
I'll find you. He likes me, really. Right.
told you to fuck off.
Yeah, that's quite common. But then when I go to bed in the nighttime, she'll run at me and then... Hang on.
Is it a he or she?
It's a she. I call all the animals. All animals are he to me, but it's a girl cat.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? The red
Oh, how will you survive?
She'll do that. She'll come into the night and scrape the shit out of me every night.
Do we need to like perform triage on you, or are you gonna be okay there, Gary? Huh? You gonna be okay?
Grenada's 1951 general election. 6 of the 8 seats. Well, it shows you how small the country is. There's only 8 seats in the entire government. 6 of the 8. Yeah. 6 of the 8 seats went to the Grenada United Labour Party, Gulp, led by Eric Gary. 6 of the 8 seats went to the Grenada Gulp, led by Eric Gary, this man here, although the actual head of government was still the Viceroy of Grenada. Gary was a trade unionist who led a massive general strike in 1951 that ended up in so many buildings being on fire that it is still called the Sky Red Strike in Grenada.
That sounds like a baller, man. We need more of that.
Yeah, he's great, but also he's one of these guys like Robert Mugabe, who was great in the revolution and then let everything go straight to his fucking head.
It's never good.
No, you remember who Mugabe was the good guy in like the 1970s?
Right.
And then he went completely insane. Anyway, Gary's a bit like this. We'll find out. No spoilers, right? We'll find out. Yeah. Like the labor movements and left-wing people loved Mugabe in the 70s, and now they can't. He's fucking toxic. He's radioactive. The Gulp again won 6 of the 8 seats in the 1954 general election. They were reduced to 2 seats by the 1957 general election. The Grenada National Party, the GNP, and the People's Democratic Movement and the Independents each won 2 seats, but Gary was not eligible to be a candidate. He was banned from, well, you'll find out why. He was banned from all political activity because he had led a steel band through an opponent's rally.
What?
He led a steel band through an opponent's rally trying to drown them out. And that was regarded as indignitatum for the election, so he was banned from all political activity. He was still,
okay.
yeah. No, he's one of these guys. He's like one of these, the trade unionists tend to be either like committed left-wing kind of Marxist people or street fighters. That's really the two kind of people you get in trade unions, right? So they're either kind of, I don't want to say college educated, but you know what I mean, right? The Marxist kind of left-wing guys, and then you get the street fighters, and you need both of them for a functional union, but you don't want the street fighters running the place, right? And I think this guy might have been in the latter category, but anyway. He was banned from all political activity because he led a steel band through an opponent's rally. He was still ineligible for the 1961 general election, but his party won 8 of the 10 seats without him. The following month, now this is strange, the following month, British government pressure led to Gary being reinstated as the still largely powerless chief minister. So the British government made a phone call and said, look, I know he's banned from politics, can you just put him in charge? So they liked
the British government wanted to put a guy that was pro-labor in charge. That's interesting.
Well, I think he was probably street fightery enough that they kind of felt like he'd be able to keep control.
Mm-hmm. That's what they wanted, yeah.
Yeah, they're really, it's a matter of control, I think, because the British government here would be thinking about it the same way as the Americans usually think of these things. After several, this guy was corrupt to fuck, by the way. After several corruption allegations, the Grenada Assembly was dissolved and new elections were held in 1962. The GNP, led by Herbert Blaise, won 6 of the 10 seats, and Blaise was appointed chief minister. Gary won 7 of the 10 seats in the 1967 general election, and he was chief minister again, right? And one of the things that happened in 1967 is they adopted that as the flag, and that thing in the middle is nutmeg, right?
Ah, okay.
That's how important it is to them, nutmeg. Right, next I have Jennifer Hostin. Do you see a picture of Jennifer Hostin there?
Yep, hold on.
There she is. Look at her. That's Jennifer Hostin. Right? Look at her. She looks like a James Bond girl, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does.
In 1970, now this is some way relevant. In 1970, the Miss World contest was held in London. Somehow, Eric Gary found himself on the judging panel. Oh, it gets better. The winner, Jennifer Hostin, that lady there, was the first black woman ever to win the competition, which would be bad enough on its own, but she was also from Grenada. She's Grenadian.
Why is it bad?
Because Eric Gary was in the judging panel. There were dark allegations of corruption, with 4 of the other judges claiming that they had put the Swedish girl in first place. There were protests from all sides, which eventually died down because no one cares. But it did nothing for the corruption allegations that followed Gary around. I mean, this guy was coming out of a serious series of corruption allegations. He goes straight into a thing where the Grenadian girl, with the population of that tiny-ass country, wins Miss World.
I mean,
Gary,
I'm okay with that, but
yeah, I'm not against her. Gary later appointed Hostin as Grenada's ambassador to Canada, and she lives in Canada now. And she's done interviews about the whole thing. And she said she saw these feminists outside saying, "This is demeaning to women. This is demeaning to women." Which, she said this was before they had talent competitions. They were basically just checking out her ass and saying, "Yeah, that's a great ass, 100%, right?" But she said something very interesting. She said this was really the first time a lot of people had seen a black woman as being like deemed the most attractive woman in the world.
Yeah.
Like, that's possible, that black women can be regarded as attractive by not just other black people or whatever, but by everybody. And she thought that was powerful and valid. And she doesn't really give a shit that they were objectifying her, She still sees it as empowering. Now, these days, she's 80 something.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man.
It sucks because it got overshadowed by all that bullshit. So
yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. In the 1973 general election, Gulp won 13 of the 15 seats, consolidating their hold over the assembly. Also in 1973, the New Jewel movement was established, a communist party, and there's no point in saying two ways about it. It was a communist party, led by lawyer Maurice Bishop, whose platform allowed for violent overthrow if elections would not produce results for the people of Grenada. And that's a very common thing in communist parties all over the world. Wherever you're a communist party, there'll be a little subclause in it saying that violent overthrow is acceptable if you don't get your aims right. Most of them don't enact it because if they get enough kind of socialist concessions from the government, they won't need to. Or if, I guess if they check you at the airport, like in America. I was asked if I was a member of the Communist Party before I got my green card.
Seriously?
Yeah. He said, "Are you a member of the Communist Party?" I said, "No." And then he asked me, would I do something sedition against the state or something? On my own? It's going to take more than me to take down the country.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's 3 people there. You should be, the middle one there is Maurice Bishop, right? The guy who obviously modeled himself from the Black Panthers, right?
Yep.
Now, he's the Marxist guy. But can you name the other 2 people?
Castro.
You know who that guy is, that other guy. I promise.
Noriega?
No, but close. He's Daniel Ortega from Nicaragua.
Ah, okay.
Remember that episode?
Yeah.
That's him.
Yep.
And he's still hanging out with Castro. In the middle there is Maurice Bishop looking very happy, because why wouldn't he be? Now, we'll leave that up for a little while. In 1974, as part of a general pro-independence effort by the United Kingdom, as the profitability of the Caribbean colonies began to wind down, I know that's a cynical way to put it, but that's effectively what happened, Grenada was granted its independence, and Gary was now the Prime Minister of a proper grown-up country. The Queen's representative, Paul Scoon, was still the formal head of state in an ostensibly Commonwealth country, but he had no power. So they stayed inside the Commonwealth, right?
Gotcha.
But unlike before, he really didn't have veto power or anything. It was around this time that the people of Grenada began to turn on Gary, not just because of his flagrant corruption, but because he was perceived to be responsible for the economic decline of Grenada, and some observers felt that he was certifiably insane. For instance, he was obsessed with UFOs and he compared himself to God. In 1977, he petitioned the United Nations to set up a review committee for UFOs and wanted to make 1978 the International Year of the UFO. Now, while that's all fine, it's not something you want to hear from a prime minister, right?
Right.
I'm all right with UFO investigations and so on, but I don't want to hear my prime minister talking about it. In fact, this Gary guy...
Do we know why he became so obsessed with UFOs? Or
the current theory is that he was certifiably insane.
Okay.
In fact, he became something of a ruthless dictator, running a secret police called the Mongoose Gang. All of these guys have a secret police, right? These guys were called, in Iran, they had Savak. In Haiti, they had the Tong Tong Makut, remember?
Yep.
And these guys are called the Mongoose Gang.
It's a pretty fucking cool name, though.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, at least he's better than, the last episode we did with the fucking, the British intelligence and the German intelligence, the names.
Oh, yeah. The names are poor.
Yeah.
They call them things like Ivan and Bob.
Yeah. And the CIA has some terrible names.
Yes, but they did, the name of this operation they did, the name of this episode is pretty cool. Right?
Yeah.
Operation Urgent Fury. I mean, that's a hell of a name.
Yeah,
Um,
not very coded there.
no, it's a little bit on the nose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but this guy Gary became some. That's a picture of. You're still looking at Maurice Bishop, but the guy in
Uh,
charge at the moment is Gary. Gary became something of a ruthless dictator, running a secret police called the Mongoose Gang, who were referred to by MI5 intelligence reports as an ununiformed and undisciplined body, and that many of them have criminal records. Right, which again would be quite common for this kind of business.
mhm.
Nevertheless, Gary represented stability from the British government point of view. The GNP, led by Herbert Blaise, decided to join the New Jewel movement, the NJM, to contest the 1976 general election as a democratic coalition. Now, they weren't in the same party, they just decided to join forces as a coalition. That happens sometimes in any kind of country.
Sure.
In this election, Gulp won 9 of the 15 seats. However, this time, international observers said the election was fraudulent. Also, the Mongoose Gang was openly threatening opposition politicians.
Hmm.
So that's not good, right?
Yeah.
The NJM coalition refused to recognize the result, but Gary held on to power with increasing violence. Now, the thing about the NJM was, because they didn't recognize the result correctly, because it was fraudulent, their constitution now allowed them to engage in violent
Right.
methods, because basically their democracy has been hijacked.
Yep.
Yeah. In March 1979, after a string of crippling strikes and rumors that Gary was about to have the entire NJM leadership liquidated, Gary went on a business trip to New York. The New Jewel movement took the opportunity to stage a revolution. They quickly took control of the police, the army, and the government without killing anyone, and set up the people's. Yeah, it was fast. Well, it's a small country; they move fast. Set up.
Yeah, but still, it's impressive to do that without killing anybody. I'm just.
It's
saying.
very impressive. Yeah, I'm impressed. Anytime there's a bloodless revolution, fan of that. They quickly took control of the police, the army, and the government without killing anyone, and set up the People's Revolutionary Government with openly communist ideals, led by Maurice Bishop, the black gentleman we saw in between the two uber communists.
Yeah.
There was a lot of the usual stuff about this will be very common from any of my scripts. This is just cut and paste, right? There was a lot of the usual stuff about universal healthcare, education, and land reform. An organization was set up called the National Cooperative Development Agency to deal with the joblessness and landlessness faced by the country's youth. This agency was helping to get privately held, uncultivated land into the hands of young prospective farmers tasked with reviving the local and export agricultural markets. So that these communists, the first thing they'll do is they will pretty much free up all the privately owned land.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Chris Searle, who was a historian specializing in Grenada, said that there were people out cheering in their thousands with the police stations in their hands and Gary's ministers and hoodlums under lock and key. Most Grenadians were indeed very happy to see the end of Gary. In fact, Gary had become so radioactive that the news of a communist takeover in Grenada did not immediately send the CIA into apoplexy as might be expected. That's how bad things were in Grenada. But that was before Reagan took over and before Bishop made solid connections with Russia, Cuba, and Nicaragua. Now, in April 1975, Maurice Bishop made a speech, right? And this is a bit long, but I liked it, and I cut bits out of it, but it's still, we'll write it out together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you don't have this, Seamus, so sit back and relax. He said, "Good evening, sisters and brothers of free Grenada. Today, 1 month after our historic People's Revolution, there is peace, calm, and quiet in our country. Indeed, there has been a tremendous drop in the crime rate since our revolution." An unusually high number of tourists for an off-season period are presently enjoying the beauty of our land and the warmth of our people, and this is so in spite of the fact that we have just had a revolution and that a real and present threat of mercenary invasion is faced by our country. The same comments are being daily made by the hundreds of medical students studying in Grenada. In fact, it is clear that there is no sense of panic here or hesitation by the tourists who daily continue to stream into Grenada, and as far as I know, this is all true. For this reason, we want the people of Grenada and the Caribbean to realize that if all of a sudden tourists start panicking and leaving the country or stop coming to our country, then they should note that this came after veiled threats by the United States ambassador with respect to our tourist industry. The ambassador, Mr. Frank Ortiz, on his last visit to Grenada some days ago, went out of his way to emphasize the obvious importance of tourism to our country. His point, and we accept the point, that tourism was and is critical to the survival of our economy. The ambassador went on to advise us that if we continued to speak about what he called mercenary invasions by phantom armies, we would lose all the tourists. In his official meetings with the Minister of Finance and with me on Tuesday of this week, the ambassador stressed the fact that his government will view with great displeasure the development of any relations between our country and Cuba. The ambassador pointed out that his country was the richest, freest, and most generous country in the world, but, as he put it, we have two sides. We understood that to mean that the other side he was referring to was the side which stamped freedom and democracy when the American government felt that their interests are being threatened. People are panicky, and I will have to report that to my government, he said. This is now what the American ambassador said this directly to this guy. Fucking cheek of them, right? At the end of our discussions on Tuesday, the ambassador handed me a typed statement of his instructions from the government to be given to us. The relevant section of that statement reads, and I quote, although my government recognizes your concern over allegations of a possible counter-coup, it also believes that it could not be in Grenada's best interest to seek assistance from a country like Cuba. We would view with displeasure any tendency on the part of Grenada to develop closer ties with Cuba. End of ambassador letter. It is well established internationally that all independent countries have a full, free, and unhampered right to conduct their own affairs. We do not therefore recognize any right of the United States to instruct us in who we may or may not develop relations with. We feel that the people of Grenada have a right to know precisely what steps we have taken in our attempts to establish relations at various levels with the United States, and the response which we have so far received. Now, this will be familiar to anybody, again, who's been listening to our podcast. It happened in Panama, it happened in Guatemala, it happened in Cuba. They applied to America for aid. They said, will you please help us? We need money to rebuild the country, right?
Sure. Well.
Yeah. Where are we? From this is back to this Maurice Bishop speech now. From the second day of our revolution, during our first meeting with the American government representatives in Grenada, we pointed out that the massive assistance, technical and financial, would be required in order to begin the process of rebuilding our economy. The American Consul General assured us that he would encourage his government to give us necessary assistance. However, 1 month later, no such aid has arrived. Our hospitals are without medicines, sheets, pillowcases, and proper equipment. Our schools are falling down. Most of our rural villages are in urgent need of water, electricity, health clinics, and decent housing. Half of the people in our country who are able to and would like to work cannot do so. 4 out of every 5 women are forced to stay at home or scrunt around for a meagre existence. It is in these circumstances, and because we have an undoubted right to defend our people, our sovereignty, and our freedom, that we have called on the Americans, Canadians, British, our fellow countries like Guyana and Jamaica, Venezuela, and Cuba to assist us with arms. And we reject entirely the argument of the American ambassador that we would be only entitled to call upon the Cubans to come to our assistance after mercenaries have landed. Quite frankly, and with the greatest respect, a more ridiculous argument can hardly be imagined. It's like asking a man to wait until his house is burning down before he leaves to buy a fire extinguisher. No, we intend, if possible, to provide ourselves with a fire extinguisher before the fire. And if the government of Cuba is willing to give it to us, well, we're going to be very happy to receive it. Grenada is a sovereign and independent country, although a tiny speck on the world map, and we expect all countries to strictly respect our independence just as we will respect theirs. No country has the right to tell us what to do or how to run our affairs or who to be friendly with, and we will not attempt to tell any other country what to do. We are not in anybody's backyard, and we are definitely not for sale. Anybody who thinks they can bully us or threaten us has no understanding, ideal, or clue as to what we are made of. They clearly have no idea of the tremendous struggles which our people have fought over the past 7 years, he means under the Gary dictatorship. Though small and poor, we are proud and determined. We would sooner give up our lives before we compromise, sell out, or betray our independence, our integrity, our manhood, whatever that means, and the right of our people to national self-determination and social progress. Long live the revolution, long live free Grenada. Right?
Wow.
That is the speech. Quite a powerful speech.
Yeah, not bad.
But it tells you that in 1979, he knows the Americans are gearing up for an invasion. In 1979, he knows that he was told that the Americans will not be helping him fund the country. And he's explaining why he feels that he has to move to Cuba. Because they will help him, not because he loves fucking Cuba. He said he sent out to countries, all countries, Guyana, Jamaica, Venezuela, all of them. Right? That's the thing. Now, things started to go south fast. And this, by the way, has nothing to do with the CIA. There were rumors that the CIA had something to do with it, but I haven't found any evidence of that, so I'm not going to...
Okay.
Things started to go south fast. There were no elections on the horizon. All other political parties were banned. Some political critics were jailed by the communist revolutionary government. There were inevitable improvements in healthcare, education, and employment, but the economy was clearly crashing into the ground, and the Americans were already circling like a vulture, right?
Mm-hmm.
In November 1981, Bishop made another speech. Don't worry, there's no longer one. Bishop made another speech where he made reference to Operation Amber, which was a series of U.S. military exercises in Puerto Rico, and as he called them, shameless rehearsals for eventual invasions. Now, in 1981, again, he is aware not just the Americans are planning to invade, but they are conducting live fire Puerto Rico rehearsals for not just invasions in general, but specifically an invasion of Grenada, because Operation Amber was referred to in-house in the army as Amber and the Amberdeens, right?
Yeah.
And the Grenadines are all the islands north of Grenada are called the Grenadines, right? The Grenadines.
Right.
So that was just a sign, if anything, that Grenada in particular was being targeted, although presumably those same guys would end up in Nicaragua a few years later, right? In March 1983, Reagan made a national address, and as a part of this, he said, "On the small island of Grenada, at the southern edge of the Caribbean chain, the Cubans, with Soviet financing and backing, are in the process of building an airfield with a 10,000-foot runway. Grenada doesn't even have an air force. Who is it intended for?" Right? So he's rattling sabers 2 years after he ran live fire exercises to take over the place. Come on. By late 1983, the Central Committee of the Revolutionary Government were at each other's throats. And again, this has nothing to do with the Americans. This is just bad news for the communists. In September, Bishop agreed to take a joint leadership with Bernard Coard in an attempt to keep the peace. But this did not take. After further committee infighting, Bishop was placed under arrest on the 13th of October. 1983 we're in, right? On the 19th of October, thousands of Bishop's supporters freed him from house arrest. The army moved in and shot at least 8 civilians in the crowd. They also took out Bishop, Foreign Minister Eunice Whiteman, Education Minister Jacqueline Kraft, and Housing Minister Nora Spain, and executed them.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ is the correct reaction, yeah. The remaining committee members immediately formed a hard communist government led by General Hudson Austin and declared a 4-day curfew. No one is to leave their house. Anyone violating this curfew will be shot on sight. That was the order. That's fairly simple, right? None of this legal language, just bang, bang, right? 6 days later, on the 25th of October, the United States invaded.
Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum. Now we are going to do our top 10. That's charming. This top 10 is very quick and simple. These are the top 10 Caribbean territories still owned by European countries today. All right, now I don't have them outlined, and the reason I don't have them separately outlined is because they are all in this little group of the Caribbean islands, which is the back half of, that's Haiti and Dominican Republic, and that's Puerto Rico, and then all that little thing down there, right? Little curve. Guadeloupe is an overseas department and region of France in the Caribbean. Now, in France's defense, Guadeloupe is an overseas department, meaning they are a proper part of France. They get to vote in French elections. They use euros and so on. It's not like a colony, right? San Bartolome, also known as St. Bart's, is a Caribbean island owned by France in the Caribbean, not a department. San Martin is an island in the northeast Caribbean, divided roughly between France and the Netherlands. It's cut in two. Martinique is an island in the eastern Caribbean Sea, an overseas department of France is another one of those departments. Department just means like state, right, or county. Saba is a Caribbean island and the smallest special municipality of the Netherlands. Special municipality is what they call them. They're just like ownership, I guess. Anguilla is an island in the Caribbean owned by the UK. Sint Eustatius is an island in the Caribbean, a special municipality of the Netherlands. The British Virgin Islands. The British Virgin Islands are the British Virgin Islands, are a collection of islands in the Caribbean owned by the UK. The Turks and Caicos Islands are 2 groups of tropical islands in the Caribbean owned by the UK, and Bonaire is a Caribbean island and is a special municipality of the Netherlands. And just in case you think all these things are over and so on, all those places are currently owned by European countries right now. Yeah. That was our top 10. It's an easy one. It was an easy top 10 this time, wasn't it? Now we're going to talk about the American invasion at last, Barry. This is called Operation Urgent Fury, all right? The Reagan administration gave 3 reasons for the invasion. First, American lives, mainly the medical students in St. George's University, were at risk, supposedly, right? Secondly, the links Grenada made with Cuba and Nicaragua threatened to export communism throughout the region. And third, the construction of a massive airport at Port Salines represented a national security threat to the US. Now, you remember in 1979, Morris Bishop's speech, he discussed those students. And even in 1979, he said they were fine. As for the first claim about the American students being in danger, both Jeffrey Bourne, Vice Chancellor of the medical school, and Gary Solon, who was an administrator of the medical school, said the students were never in danger, both at the time and in retrospect. Perhaps more tellingly, no one in the American government contacted anyone in the university about the safety of their students.
That's weird.
During the curfew, meaning, you remember the curfew, the direct, General Austin...
go outside or you get your head blown off kind of thing?
You will get shot dead, yeah. That was a 6-day curfew. During the curfew, before the Americans invaded, General Austin himself contacted the school, offering to take the students out and promised safe evacuation. In other news, a Canadian airplane sent to evacuate Canadian citizens from Grenada was given permission to land during the curfew, but was prevented from taking off from Barbados, not by Grenada, but by the United States.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. In any case, it seems fairly obvious that staging a full-scale invasion of an entire country would probably be more dangerous for the students than whatever they were supposed to be doing in the medical
Right.
school. The military action was clearly conducted with a view to controlling the whole island, and not just with the security of the students. As for the second claim, that organization between Cuba, Nicaragua, and Grenada could threaten to export communism throughout Latin America, fair enough. Even if these links were more to foster economic development than any other purpose, meaning like all they wanted was investment to build their country. They weren't interested in starting a revolution other than the one they already did to get the country back from dictatorship. It probably would have that effect, but whether or not that's a reason to invade is a separate issue. So I guess Reagan's second claim is kind of maybe correct. As for the third claim about the airport, an international caliber airport had been on the cards for Grenada as early as the 1950s, then explained as an essential element of modern infrastructure. More recently, Maurice Bishop had been proactively establishing a tourist industry for Grenada, even to the point of setting up a national airline in that country that size. So you know he was serious about it.
Yeah.
The existing airport could only handle smaller aircraft and not the sort of passenger jets they would like to see rolling in from Western Europe in particular. The Americans had complained that the airport was funded by Cuba and was being built by Cuban soldiers pretending to be construction workers. But the US had turned down requests from Maurice Bishop to fund the building of an airport. And the final funding consortium, which was, like, to be fair, mainly Cuba, but it also included many other countries, including Canada, Venezuela, and Mexico. International observers noted that the airport had none of the features you would expect to see in an airport designed for military use, like protected fuel tanks, anti-aircraft defense, a parallel runway, or any sort of perimeter security. In fact, security was so loose around the construction site that people would readily go out and have lunch there, and the American students in the medical school nearby used the flat space as a jogging track. Again, That's the kind of thing you would expect to find in a military airport.
Not at all.
Yeah, repeated accusations that their new airport would have military capability were rebuffed with the simple observation that any sort of military goings-on in Point Salinas Airport would jeopardize the nascent tourist industry. None of this stopped the invasion, which appears to be about nothing more than sluicing communists who were unable to defend themselves in any meaningful way. And that's a kind of a sad thing to say, but that's what it looks like. It looks like they just wanted to liquidate a country full of communists being run by communists who were unable to defend themselves. The invading force...
They wanted to win.
They wanted to win.
It was a political thing. They just wanted to win.
Yeah, it was very soon after the Beirut thing, when their embassy got fucked, and they wanted to win. We're going to discuss the Beirut thing at some other time. They wanted to win. Sad, right?
Yeah.
The invading force machinery consisted of, and you know how I love my invading force machinery, consisted of the USS Independence, what an ironically named ship.
Yeah, really.
Support ships.
We're here to give you some freedom.
I know,
Bringing freedom to you.
The USS Independence, support ships, a troop transport ship, transport airplanes, small artillery, jeep-mounted missiles, tanks, armored personnel carriers, and the quote of one guy who was there, coordinated banks of machine guns carried by C-130 Hercules aircraft, and literally tons of ordnance. The people...
Well, they're going to Idaho, right? I mean, or no, it's a country smaller than Idaho. So
you've seen the size of the country compared to Rhode Island.
Rhode Island at it. Oh, It's Rhode Island. I'm sorry. I thought we were like going after like Idaho.
Yeah, it's about 1/4 the size of Rhode Island. The people involved comprised the 1st and 2nd Battalions of the U.S. Army's 75th Ranger Regiment, 2 brigades of the 82nd Airborne Division, a U.S. Marines Battalion, Delta Force, Navy SEALs, and a USAF Tactical Air Control Party from Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina. It's one of the
I'm sorry. This screams like insecurity. This is small dick energy.
This is very small dick energy.
Yeah, coming from the U.S. military.
Yeah,
like Jesus Christ.
I'm starting to really regret that I did not put your phrase in there. They
small dick energy.
No, they wanted to win.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. I didn't put any of that in here. I just said they want to get rid of the communists, but they wanted to win.
Yeah, they just wanted a giant show of force to show what a fucking tough guy that Reagan is.
That is accurate.
That's it. It's just fucking insane.
It's the only explanation that makes sense of all the facts we have. Yeah. This added up to 7,600 troops. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but it is a lot in a country with a population of 100,000. It would be like if the United States was invaded by an army of 23 million people.
Give me that number again. How many troops did it bring in?
7,600 in total into a country with a population of 100,000, which I did the math on, and it was like as if the United States was invaded by an army of 23 million.
That's insane.
It's too many. It's ridiculous. It's just
that's like 7%.
Yeah. The Grenadian and their Cuban auxiliaries put up a brave fight. The the workers were actually the opposite. The Americans came, they were army guys masquerading as construction workers, but it was actually the other way around. There were construction
Oh,
workers who were forced into fighting.
no.
The grenading their Cuban auxiliaries put up a brave fight, particularly at the construction site of the new airport, but the sheer might of US firepower won out, and by the 2nd of November, the island was completely under American control. On the 3rd of November, the day after, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution which deeply deplores the armed intervention in Grenada, which constitutes a flagrant violation of international law and of the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of that state, and which calls for an immediate cessation of the armed intervention and the immediate withdrawal of the foreign troops from Grenada. The resolution was passed 108 to 9.
Barry,
Yeah.
come on. That's this big talk from foreign people that have no control over America. Okay, they don't understand. They're talking about America.
Yeah.
And those rules don't apply to America and Israel. So just go away with that bullshit. Come on.
Yeah.
Why even bother?
No. Miss me with that United Nations General Resolution.
Yeah.
Well, the resolution was passed 108 to 9. Many countries which the US regarded as its allies voted in favor of the resolution, including most of NATO countries, Canada,
surprising.
and the United Kingdom. Canada was fine with Grenada all along. The United Kingdom was not informed of the invasion, even though Grenada was technically still a Commonwealth country, so they were angry. After the invasion, the entire People's Revolutionary Government was arrested and jailed, most of them having had their executions commuted. An interim government was installed by the Americans, approved by Paul Schoon, led by a guy called Nicholas Braithwaite, who would serve as Prime Minister from 1990 to 1995. In December 1983, which is a month after the invasion, Reagan gave a speech in New York City to the Congressional Medal of Honor Society. He said, "The quest for freedom continues to build. There is a revolution going on in this world, a revolution for freedom and democratic ideals. History doesn't offer many crystal clear lessons for those who manage our nation's affairs, but here are a few. One of them surely is a lesson that weakness on the part of those who cherish freedom inevitably brings a threat to that freedom. With the best intentions, we have tried turning our swords into plowshares, hoping that others will follow. While our days of weakness are over, our military forces are back on their feet and standing tall. Modern equipment is being delivered to troops and more is on the way."
Oh my.
Yeah, and we do none of this because we seek war. Yeah. Indeed, we hope we will preserve the peace. But when our citizens are threatened, it's the government's responsibility to go to their aid like we did in Grenada. Our forces had what they needed to get the job done. And now the world knows that when it comes to our national security, the United States will do whatever it takes to protect the safety and freedom of the American people. And I can promise you, there is not one American person whose safety and freedom was protected by the invasion of Grenada. Not one. And I'm including
nobody was in danger.
Yeah, I'm including all the Americans who were in the island at the time of the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God damn.
In April 1984, In April 1984, the following year, the Reagan administration announced $40 million in funding for Grenada. The largest chunk of that was $19 million for an international airport.
If they had just waited, the airport would have been done.
Let's just let that sink in for a moment. This airport, that means that they're all communist Egypts, is now going to be funded by the Americans. At the general election held in December 1984, 14 of the 15 seats were won by a newly constituted New National Party led by Herbert Blaise, who would serve as Prime Minister until his death in 1989. The GULP, which was still around, won one seat.
Wow.
In 1986, Reagan visited Grenada himself and dedicated a plaque for the newly completed Port Salinas Airport.
Awesome.
In 2009, it was renamed Maurice Bishop International Airport. So they got something out of it, right?
Yeah, I guess.
That is my episode on the invasion of Grenada and the surrounding issues regarding that. A quick one, but that's okay.
That was good.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a quick war too, so
Yes, as both of my ex-wives will tell you, I'm fond of a quick one. This next bit is who's new? Who's new?
Who's new?
What's new? Just before every podcast, myself and Seamus put the words FBI and CIA into Google, and then we hit the news tab and we see what insane madness those organizations are up to recently, this week, or in recent past, to show you that all of this weird shit is ongoing. Right?
Yep.
Seamus, show me what you have for FBI, will you please?
The FBI is investigating attacks on Tesla as domestic terrorists.
Why? Oh, what?
So if you don't like Elon Musk and you take it out on his poor little Teslas, then it's apparently, quote, let this be a warning. If you join the wave of domestic terrorism against Tesla properties, the Department of Justice will put you behind bars, said Bondi. She's the dipshit
Right now.
in,
What about
in the
the?
Justice Department.
What about but if you literally partake in an insurrection in the capital, you'll get a pardon from the president.
What insurrection? That was an inside job, don't you know?
It was
Bunch
Antifa, was
of
it?
yeah, it was
Yeah.
Antifa. Yeah, because people are firebombing the shit out of Teslas,
Yeah.
which usually they start their own fire anyways. They blow up and
Well, that's not a domestic
bite the
terrorism. That's
people.
just criminal damage.
Yeah,
I mean, they should be arrested for criminal damage at the
yeah.
most. Yeah.
Hey, it's just it's total bullshit. It's just a way of exercising more powers upon the masses whenever they're doing
Yeah.
any sort of civil disobedience.
Yeah.
Uh, So FBI director avoids. Sorry,
Battle.
my computer froze.
Cash.
FBI devoid. Cash Patel. Uh, he avoids committee to investigate signal leak and tell Congress he wasn't reviewed the chat that Trump says is. Sorry, this keeps moving on me. Chat Trump says is not really an FBI thing.
Do you mean the Pete Hegseth thing?
Yeah. So for those that live under a rock, there is during the bombing of Yemen, there is a coordinated group chat, and Pig Hegseth, I get his name butchered all the time. Anyways, he accidentally included a reporter from the Atlantic in the group chat. So, yeah, oopsie daisy.
Yeah. Why were they coordinating these things on Signal anyway? They're fucking government
Exactly.
employees. Everything should be logged.
And I also love the fact that the story is that instead of the fact that they bypassed Congress to do anything
Yeah.
to fucking start bombing the
Mm.
fucking Houthis. Fuck these people.
Yep.
FBI and the DHS questioned using tattoos to be accurately identification of Venezuela criminal gangs. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So because they're using that to decide who to pick up by ICE and then deport them to El Salvador for basically fucking slavery.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's looked into that. It's fucking gross.
Yeah.
But
But,
yeah,
but if you have these gang tattoos, I mean, like that's
Yeah.
evidence that you're in a gang, isn't it?
I mean, who's to say? Because it's so flawed as to what tattoos actually mean, or if this tattoo is actually that. You know what I
Oh.
mean? I mean, unless if it's a straight up swastika. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, last one, FBI. Oh, geez, come on. FBI alert issued as time traveling hackers attacked.
Oh yes, I love it. Tell me more.
So apparently, this is a. I had to read this to make sense out of it.
The headline after read twice.
So there's a thing. It's what it's called, the Medusa ransomware attacks.
What?
And I guess what it does, and I'm trying to make sense of this, so bear with me.
Yeah.
You have an expiration date on some of your software or your hardware or whatever, and it accelerates it. So it basically tricks your software and stuff to believe that 13 years has passed.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. That's clever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
So
that.
I just thought that was an interesting headline.
It is.
I didn't get this brought up either, but the whole FBI headquarters thing is still in play now, I guess. There's a second push to make them not move as opposed to move, but then they're also relocating people. So it's just a clusterfuck like everything else in the White House right now. So maybe next time we'll have a better, sense of it all, and we'll report on it then. So that's all I got.
Okay. Do you want to hear the CIA stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. One day you're going to say no, and I won't know how to answer it. The headline here is, this is from the Moscow Times. Russian and U.S. spy chiefs hold first talks in years, agree to regular contact. The heads of the U.S. and intelligence agencies spoke by phone and agreed to maintain regular contact in an effort to ease tensions between the two countries, Russian state media reported Wednesday. CIA Director John Ratcliffe and Sergei Narishkin, who's head of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, spoke on Tuesday and was the first such high-level exchange in years. That's good news, I guess.
Mm.
Not for Russians and Americans, but for two boys.
Yeah.
Another one is CIA boss William Buckley taken by Hezbollah in 1984, which is on Deseret.com. On March 16th, 1984, William Buckley, the CIA station chief in Beirut, we were just talking about Beirut, was kidnapped by Hezbollah militants. He would be tortured by his captors and killed in 1985. In our news story of the day, Buckley was listed as an American diplomat. 1 year later to the day, Associated Press correspondent Terry Anderson was kidnapped in Beirut by Hezbollah militants, and he would spend nearly 7 years in captivity before being freed. One man made it home, the other did not. And that's the whole story about that. It's interesting if you're into that kind of thing. But I will be talking about the whole Lebanon invasion and Hezbollah at some point. And at some point, I will be talking about Israel in general. I literally have an entire book of stuff of Israel. I have like about 80,000 words on Israel, but it's spread out all over the place. Starts off like in the fucking Garden of Eden. Anyway.
Allegedly.
Yeah. From theguardian.com, the CIA Book Club by Charlie English. In, I think, November 1978, this is the start of John Simpson. John Simpson's a reporter in his article. He says, in, I think, November 1978, I got a call from a rather grand British journalist who heard I was about to go to Moscow. A Russian friend of mine would like the latest volume of Solzhenitsyn's The Gulag Archipelago. I don't suppose you'd smuggle it in for him. I did, of course, disguising it rather feebly by wrapping it in the dust jacket of the most boring book I had, Lebanon, A Country in Transition. Don't worry, when I do the Lebanon episode, it won't be boring. A customs official at Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport flicked through it briefly, but even though the text was in Russian, he didn't see what it was about. 2 nights later, near the entrance to Gorky Park, I handed over the book to a shifty character who seemed to be a supplier of forbidden goods to the dissident community. He gave me a small 18th century icon in exchange for it. It's only now, all these years later, that I realize I was almost certainly a naive mule for a CIA scheme to smuggle subversive books through the Iron Curtain. So that is a very interesting article by John Simpson, cool. The Guardian, yeah. And of course, this, I don't know if this is news, but CIA fires an unspecified number of new officers. The Central Intelligence Agency fired a slew of recent hires this week. 3 people familiar with the matter said cuts that current and former U.S. intelligence officers warned would risk damaging U.S. national security. The firings under Trump and new CIA Director John Ratcliffe come as Trump presides over massive federal workforce reductions overseen by billionaire Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency. And there's a whole big long-ass article there about that. If you feel like being depressed about where your country is going, if you're American, and indeed if you're a citizen of any other country.
Awesome.
That is my CIA links, and I believe that is our show, Seamus, unless you have something else you'd like to share. You don't have any shout-outs this week, do you?
Nope. We'll be back here in 2 weeks and talking about something.
We're under an hour. We're talking under an hour.
Yeah, so we'll be back in 2 weeks, and it'll be FBI or FBI-related most likely. So, hey, we'll see you guys then. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.